very big welcome here on West Country Wanderings for another one in my Cotswold Walk series. Yes, indeed, we've already got to number 33. Today we're in the county of Wiltshire, so we're in the Wiltshire part of the Cotswolds. If you're not that familiar with the Cotswolds, you may be surprised to know that it covers quite a few different counties, including Gloucestershire, Worcestershire, South Gloucestershire, Baines, and Warwickshire, as well as here in Wiltshire. Now there's two probably most famous places here in Wiltshire to do with the Cotswolds. One of them is a town a little bit further to the south on, or should I say, on a river called Bradford-on-Avon, which links to this. I'll tell you more about this, what's behind me in a moment. And a little bit further north of here is a very famous Cotswold village, probably the most famous of them all, and that is Castle Combe. But we're not going to either of those places today. As you know, here on West Country Wanderings, or you may not know if this is the first one you've watched, I like to cover less well-known places. So that's what we're doing today. I've come to the little village of Ford, which sits on the A420 between Bristol and Chippenham. Bristol is about 12 miles to the west of where I currently am, and the large Wiltshire town of Chippenham is about 9 miles to the east. That there is the Bye Brook. Really odd name because, as we'll see later on, it becomes a lot more than a brook. It eventually ends up joining the Bristol Avon at a place called Bathford, just to the west, or rather east should I say, of the city of Bath. Just behind me here, it joins up with another tributary as it heads south towards Bathford, called the Doncombe, which has come across from the west. Further up there, it's actually joined by a couple of streams around Castle Combe. I'll talk to you more about that later on as we continue our walk today. Today's walk is a circular walk. Unfortunately though, it's not a car-free one. I've actually driven here from where I live in the Stroud Valleys along the A46, cutting across through to the Cotswold town of Marshfield, which we've done on a previous Cotswold walk here, circular walk from there. So that's not far from where we are. That's kind of over in that direction, Marshfield. And I've parked my car near, but not in, the pub's car park. The pub here is known as the White Hart. Yes, it is still open. They were having a delivery here of kegs of beer, I think, when I arrived. So that's about a quarter of a mile just over in that direction. And there is a public car park next to it, which is free of charge. It is quite small, but there was loads of spaces here on a midweek September day. Our walk today is about 7.5 kilometres, so around about 5 miles, and it's going to take us to another village called Slaughterford. We're going to have a good look around there, I think, because there's lots of interest, and it links in to lots of Cotswoldy things, I feel. So we're here in the Cotswold AOMB here in Wiltshire, so let's head on our walk south towards Slaughterford. I'll tell you more about this brook and the history of this beautiful Cotswold Valley. Well, I've not long started the walk here, and already I'm very, very impressed with what I've seen with this Bye Brook here and this beautiful, beautiful weir here, which is attracting wildlife here. Just seen some birds dipping down, getting some flies from it. I haven't seen any fish in the river yet, but there are some signs saying no fishing because it's private for fishing rights, but I'm not a fisherman, so that doesn't bother me. I don't know if you can get permits. The other thing about this to say is that I've never been here before. I've never even heard of either both Ford or where we're going to, Slaughterford, before I planned this walk a couple of days ago. So you're probably thinking, how do I find out about these places to cover here on my channel West Country Wanderings? Well, it's a technique I do called map scouring. I love browsing maps. I can spend hours and hours just browsing maps, and I was literally scouring the whole of the Cotswold area of outstanding natural beauty, which we cover the whole of it here on West Country Wanderings. I'm hoping to go up into the kind of northeast, not northeast Warwickshire, but the northeast corner, which lies in the county of Warwickshire, at a future point. But today I decided on this because I saw the valley, I saw the couple of streams merging, and it caught my eye because I thought, Deep Valley, now that looks like it could be a picturesque place. And well, I haven't been proved wrong yet, so yeah, I'm really loving it. So I literally have only come about a third of a mile from where I've parked my car here at Ford here in Wiltshire. The other thing to say about this walk is that the first section of it, till we get to Slaughterford, lies on the Macmillan Way. Now, I haven't done the Macmillan Way, and there is a little emblem there on one of the posts just back there on the weir, which shows it going from Barmouth right across to Boston in Lincolnshire. Barmouth in the country of Wales, Boston, Lincolnshire, way out of my area. And then there's two other arms, one of which I think goes down to the town of Barnstaple in North Devon, which most definitely is in my area. But I'm not sure if I've walked any of the Macmillan Way before. I probably have on my wanders. I'm sure I've picked up with it and not even realised it. But yes, and I think people do it as like a sponsored walk to do the whole thing to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Care, which of course is a very worthwhile and important charity caring for people that are afflicted with that horrible disease of cancer, of course. But I'll link to it, give you more information about Macmillan Way and also Macmillan Cancer Charity in the description of today's video if you find that interesting. But this is just beautiful. I would imagine this weir has been put here and it's extended out both left and right, or north and south if you like, the Bybrook here, because it was probably used originally for fishing ponds for estates in the area of this village of Ford. Now on the other side of the weir, the paths divide. You've got routes going off that way, which is the way will be coming back following the line of the Bybrook on the valley floor. But to get to Slaughterford itself and up to the church, we're going up this way, which is the route of the Macmillan Way. So we're starting to come into the village or hamlet of Slaughterford. I'm not sure if it's a hamlet or a village. This whole area is under the area of North Wraxall, so that's the parish that it comes under. North Wraxall's another village about a couple of miles to the north of here, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful Cotswold landscape here, very unspoilt and very, very quiet. So this here is Manor Farm here in Slaughterford. Some very old buildings around the village. I'll tell you some more about it when we get up to the church. This is the lane through the village here. Takes you down to that Manor Farm we just saw. Nice lovely red telephone box there. Our church is through the style. It's actually a 15th century church, quite a bit of history behind it, so I've made some notes, so tell you a little bit more about that. And lovely style here, managed by the Cotswold Voluntary Wardens. They always do a great job in the Cotswold AOMB. I'm now inside Slaughterford Church. It was built in the 1500s, but about 100 years later, it was sadly almost demolished by Oliver Cromwell's son. It was to do with a battle, I think, came in across from Ireland, last vestiges of the English Civil War, Second English Civil War. It remained a ruin here till the latter part of the 1800s when it was completely rebuilt. A majestic church it really is. It's quite striking as you're walking down from the hill, following the valley up over from Ford, which we did earlier. It's a really, really interesting, beautiful, beautiful village, as I say, with the manor house, which dates from around the same time as the church here. There is an odd chimney though, which looks like it could be industrial. for reasons I'm not sure. I need to do a bit more homework on that, and probably I would say kind of late 18th century, 19th century. It's like a smoking stack chimney here next to or near to the manor house and manor farm. So see if I can find out about that, but I'm certain a photograph of it I took now. The other thing to tell you about Slaughterford, I may have called it Slaughterford earlier, apologies for that. Yeah, it's definitely Slaughterford because obviously ford here, and the Bybrook is near the village here. There is a fifth tributary of the Bybrook which joins it here, and that's called the Lydbrook. Yes, as in Lydbrook in North Devon, also in the Lydbrook is in North Devon, but also Lydbrook in the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire, western half of Gloucestershire. That joins in. I don't think it's got any connections to either of those two, but it joins it here, making its way further south. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to follow the line of the Bybrook as it goes down through the valley and then strike up into a nature reserve managed by the Woodland Trust. Now, I have found the answer to what that chimney was for. There's some photographs, old photographs there, dated from the 1950s, I believe. Slaughterford had a paper and rag mill. Of course, it was utilising the water from the Bybrook. There was a mill nearby here as well. So I'll see if I can insert some of those photographs. It might be a little bit dark for them to take properly inside the church here. But yeah, it's quite surprising that, because this is a very, very rural area. But it looks like at one time it employed a large people from all over this parish here of North Wraxall. It also says they have the same congregation in terms of numbers here. They hold one service once a month, and it's around about the same number of people that come here that what it did back in 1880. I was thinking our footpath went up there into Backpath Wood, but in fact it doesn't. Macmillan Way continues along this road until we head to a destination. I'll tell you more about it when we get there, because all will hopefully become clear. Well, I'm currently in Weavern Lane, and the reason it's called Weavern Lane is because the name of our Bybrook has changed its name to the Weavern. I think that is because of all the cottages to do with the mills and the fact that they were 16th century weavers' cottage there back in the village or hamlet of Slaughterford. Not sure, but what a beautiful, beautiful Cotswold village. It's completely and utterly unspoiled. I really do mean that. A lot of the Cotswold villages that you come across have been, well, they're kind of second homes, aren't they? And they've been adapted and modernised, and you see these grand cars, the Porsches and the Lamborghinis parked outside. Not here. It's a proper agricultural community, and I met a couple of people, spoke to them, very, very friendly. It's a wonderful place. I've had a little bit of exploration between the village or stroke hamlet, Slaughterford, and where I am here at Weavern Lane, and I need to get somewhere where it's a little bit more light to tell you all about it, because it's quite a story and quite a tale. Anyway, let's carry on with the walk. Well, I've got the Weaven Lane behind me, no people around. All of a sudden I hear the sound of a vehicle driving up the lane, which is really odd. And it turned out to be a couple of people from the National Grid, and they were asking me for directions, which I thought was a bit strange. I've never been here in my life before, and they wanted to know if they carried on driving up the track, could they get back out onto the public highway? Apparently they were looking at pylons, but yeah, really strange that, isn't it? I thought they would have had access to OS map, and it does say actually it's not suitable for vehicles, but they, of course, they had a four-wheel drive track type vehicle, so they can go off terrain. But they were inspecting pylons in the area. Now that wasn't part of the adventure. Now, if you look at an OS map of Slaughterford, just coming south towards Weaver's Lane, which we've been following the Weaven Brook as we head south, and you'll notice a building marked with italics, which usually means like a place of ancient historical monument. And there is one such marked there, and it says it's a Quaker house, or rather the remains of a Quaker's meeting house. And I was quite intrigued when I saw that, and I thought, I wonder if there's anything there to see. And it's marked as a little green dotted line, so like a marked line coming away from the main lane, the road, and also the Macmillan Way, that part of the village. So I thought I should be able to walk up there. Well, I couldn't find the green dotted line. It was really, really difficult to find where you're supposed to leave the road to get up to it. I went backwards and forwards, up and down the road several times. Anyway, I did find it. It's an interesting story behind it. I'll just take you over now a little bit of raw video footage that I filmed there on location. It's only about 45 seconds long. I do apologise for the video quality of it, because it was very, and I mean very dark. It's an overcast day anyway, heavily overcast it was at the time that I filmed that bit, and it's under very dense vegetation, so apologies for that, but I'll show you that bit now. So this is the remains of the Friends Meeting House. Apologies for the grainy footage. It's very, very dark in this woodland. It's dense vegetation, and it's also a very dull day. I can see one gravestone there. I think it says Richard Hibbard, or Richard Hubbard. I'll see if I can edit the raw file when I get back to get a closer image. And there's one gravestone just slightly out of shot behind it in the vegetation there, which is a bit too difficult for me to get to. It's a shame it's been left in this state. In fact, the path to get here is very, very poorly defined. It is marked on the OS map as being a right of way up to it though. Now, in the village of Slaughterford, just back there, about a mile and a half back there, once lived Henry and Sarah Chevers, a famous family from the village, for reasons I'll explain. So we're talking about the mid-1600s. She lived there with her husband, and they had, I'm not sure how many children, but several children. She was a devout Quaker, probably attending that meeting house that we saw in ruins just there. There is one grave in that area, by the way, and I can't quite read it. I'm going to edit the file because I shot it in the photo in RAW, so if I can see if I can get some more detail and insert that now, but I'm pretty certain it's not Sarah Cheever's grave. Well, she was a devout Quaker, and one of the things that she wanted to do was to preach the faith. Quakerism, I'm not sure if that's a term, but like it would with Christianity, the Quaker faith across the world. And she had designs on going to Alexandria in Egypt. I'm not quite sure why there in particular, but that's what she decided to do. Along the way there on a journey, she met another lady from a village called Inglesbatch, what was then Somerset, now in Baines, near Bath, just about 3 miles from the city, not that far from here really. And they travelled together. They had not met each other before, but they were travelling there together, and they struck up a very, very good and very close friendship. But when they arrived at their destination, things went a little bit wrong. Now, the lady from Inglesbatch was called Catherine Evans. She was about 10 years younger than Sarah Chevers. She was also married, living in Inglesbatch there in Somerset, what was then Somerset. And she lived a happy life there with her family. But she was also a devout Quaker, though it's possible that neither of their husbands were Quakers. These two became very, very close. Now, whether they had an actual relationship, lesbian relationship, I don't know. It's a possibility that that could have been the case. They arrived in Malta in December of 1657, where they were promptly arrested for distributing leaflets advertising Quakerism, the Quaker faith. That in Egypt was not allowed, particularly for women. It was not allowed for women to preach any faith whatsoever in Egypt. It's possibly still the case now in Egypt, because that's, you know, there's a problem, isn't there, with preaching in terms of women in that country. But they got arrested. They were put into house arrest. They were in house arrest for about 4 or 5 months, right into April of 1658, at which point they ended up in prison. Now, while in prison, they just were determined to write their experiences down, what they were going through, what their captors were doing to them. Presumably they were mistreating them, whatever, whether they're provided with food or not, I don't know. There are extensive diaries that still remain of their experiences in prison in Malta, incarcerated there for preaching their faith of Quakerism. They actually got out of that prison, I think about a year later, and eventually they did return back to the United Kingdom and back to this small corner, very quiet corner of the West Country. And what happened to them after that? Well, we don't really know, because it's not documented. They are only writing their story when they were together there in the prison and making the travels through both Malta and Egypt. Incredible story. So I think they both went back to their families, whether they carried on their relationship, friendship, whatever, we don't know. But we do know that they were very, very close, and we do know that there are extensive records of their time, all here from the small even village of Slaughterford here in Wiltshire, and also neighbouring Inglesbatch in what was Somerset. I'm going to continue on now to the end of Weaver's Lane, where I'll meet with the Brybrook again, or rather should I say the Weavern. We're going to cross over that and then head up into Monk's Wood. I'm guessing that here are the pylons that the workers from the National Grid were driving down the lane to check. I think this marks about the halfway point on our circular walk today from the village of Ford. And we're going to head down now. At this point, according to the OS map, we're about 80 metres above sea level. That will take us down to the valley floor bottom, back to our brook again, which is around about 40 metres. And then we'll be completing the circuit by climbing up through into both woods. Very traditional farming scene there, very traditional byre as well. Love to see, set in this deep wooded valley. Absolutely glorious countryside here. You can see the trees turning into their autumnal tints as we approach mid-September. It's feeding time for these Frisian dairy cattle here in Wiltshire. Actually, what I thought was a barn looks like it used to be the original farmhouse here. See if I can bring that up on an older map, see what it was like about 150 years ago on the OS maps. We've got a name for it. May even have been derelict then, of course. Well, we've caught up with our Brybrook again, or the Weavern, whichever you prefer at this point. It doesn't actually change the name on the OS map. There's a delightful, ancient, really, really old bridge here. See if I can get a shot of it under, which I've just walked on the footpath. Wonderful to see that there. It's actually quite a deep channel here. I can't remember, but there is a flow rate for this. I can't remember the figure on the top of my head. I'll put it in down below. I remember reading it and writing my notes, but my notebook is in my bag. But I'll put that in now because it flows here really, really fast. Because don't forget now, this is the total sum of 5 tributaries all combined flowing down towards the Bristol River Avon at Barford, just a few miles to the south of where we currently are. But it's great to see here. It does say that there's crayfish in here in the river. I haven't seen any crayfish. It's also now home to otters and beavers, which have been reintroduced into this part of Wiltshire as well. Now, what we need to do is carry on up into Monk's Wood, and at that point we'll be leaving, saying goodbye to the Macmillan Way. We'll be leaving that now and heading off onto what is open access land through Monkswood, making our way back to the village of Ford. So that's the splitting of the ways here. That's the Macmillan Way, continue on its journey to where? Well, I'm not sure really. But our way back to Ford goes up through here into the Woodland, which is a Woodland Trust Reserve. Also, I think it's Natural England Triple SI as well. Well, I have to say I'm really enjoying this wood. This is really lovely wood here. Found myself a log to sit on, which has got moss on it. I've just put a cover on it, my cover which I put around my rucksack for when it rains, to stop the moss kind of getting a green on the outside of my walking trousers here. But this is just lovely. It's so peaceful and quiet here. Apart from being called Monkswood, this is also known as Colerne Park. Colerne, nearest village here. Also near here, I think it's an RAF base, RAF Colerne, which is a huge kind of military place. Although since I've been here, I've not heard any military aircraft. And I kind of normally associate that with places like East Gloucestershire and West Oxfordshire, with Fairford and Brize Norton and places like that. But I've not seen much activity from Colerne, so I'm not sure if it's still an active airfield there or whether it's just offices or a training base. I'm not sure on that. If I can find out more, I'll put it in the usual way below. But this is great here. There's lots of fungi in the area. I'm not a fungi expert, but there are some bits and pieces, so if I see some more, I'll take some photographs of that for you to insert round about now. But we're going to continue along here as it leaves Monkswood and heads into Colerne Park, which is open access land. Well, all this is open access land, so you don't have to stick to the footpaths, although it's probably advisable to stop disturbing nature. But so we're going to follow it along here and then continue back to the edge, the other side of Slaughterford, where we were. Round the back, we might be able to see where that old mill was, the bagging mill, not sure, but we ran that side, and then we'll be going back towards the village of Ford. Well, I've come back into the village of Slaughterford. It was a little bit tricky. What I'm going to do is I'm going to revise the map to show the exact route that I did, not my original plan route, which was to go through Cullearn Park. As I say, that appears to be a cul-de-sac and there's no through route. Even though there's open access land, once you're inside it, you can't get out the other side. There's no viable way around it. So I've had to follow the road down that steep road there, which is 1 in 4 and very narrow. But thankfully I didn't meet anything going the other way. I've come back to Slaughterford and I've seen this. Can I believe this? I can't believe what I'm seeing here. This, I think, is the original water wheel which drove the power, that ragging mill there for making paper, which you saw that tall chimney. I saw it's there now. There were some little piglets around the side there, so I just got a clip of it just as I was walking past over a farmer's gate there. But you can't walk around the side of it. But this is just around a little bit further on the public right of way, which is close to the footbridge. They'll take us over the Rye Brook again. But let's see if we can get a bit of a closer look at it. But I think this is just absolutely wonderful, and it's a nice rounding off bit to our Cotswold Walk here today in Wiltshire. So there is our water wheel, and it is actually metal, not wooden. Now the chimney is difficult to show because it's a little bit overgrown at this point here, is just up there. So that's where the actual factory was, over there, over the other side of this bramble. And I think under here was a leat. So if I just kind of pan round, excuse me if it's a little bit wobbly, down here, and I don't want to fall down there, was a leat. It's very, very overgrown, and that would have been where water once ran to have powered this water wheel, which would have provided power for that factory over there making paper bags. Isn't that incredible? Left over here. It does say it was originally left here by the Cotswold Warden Service, the voluntary service, the people that do the footpaths in and around the Cotswold AMB, but it's been left to overgrow a little bit, but you can still get in it. There is a gate which is open, it's not locked, but you can see there's other buildings in the area around here. There's a bit of a red brick of a building there, and another bit down there where my tripod and bag are down there. But amazing to see this here in the village of Slaughterford by the Rye Brook. Well, I've decided to end the walk today on a beach. It's just started to rain, so apologies for splashes on the lens. But here we've got that weir there, and this bit behind there would have been the mill leat, would have provided power for that water wheel that we saw for the rag mill here in Slaughterford. I'm going to make my way now, following back the Rye Brook, back to Ford where we started. It's only about less than a mile walk back to my car. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this walk. I would say, for me, I would put this walk in the top 5 of the 33 or so walks that we've done here on the Cotswold Walk series. Hope you enjoyed it too. A little bit disappointing about not getting through Cullearn Park and the woods. I was hoping to see the plants and that in there, but maybe something we can cover on another time. Anyway, until next time on West Country Wanderings, I don't just do Cotswold Walks, I also do walks in the southwest, walks on old railway lines, along canals, and much else besides. And you'll find them all grouped in different playlists, and all the Cotswolds ones are in a separate playlist. Till next time, take care of yourselves, look after yourselves. Hope to see you on the channel again very soon. All the best for now. Bye bye.